Hey everybody, welcome to HanChat. Today I had the chance to talk to Mr. Patrick Fung, a second-year medical student at the University of Alberta. He's been a long-time friend of mine since we were about 11 years old, and we touched on a number of topics in our conversation, and we discussed some personal stories too. I had a great time, and I hope you guys enjoy. Say hello to Mr. Patrick Fung.
Are we rolling?
Yeah.
I can't see anything, but sure.
Oh, okay. It
Oh,
says it's
that's the recording.
Yeah.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Welcome back, bitches.
oh my God. Yeah.
To
What a
our
rolling start.
podcast.
What do we? Yeah.
Today I have my special guest here, Han Hyung Lee. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I am a Korean Canadian who's living in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong.
Yes, Hong Kong, the land of the free, the land of.
And how to get flagged in China? 3, 2, 1. There we go.
Boom. Yeah, who knows, man? If I post this on YouTube, they might censor this just for us saying Hong Kong. Yeah, you never know.
Ooh, true. But if you say that one, that one thing you're not allowed to say in China, maybe they won't even check.
What do you mean one thing, bro? There are the 3 T's, right? Tiananmen.
3 T's, yeah.
Tibet and Taiwan.
Well, there we go. The entire Chinese audience can't see this anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they can't see this in the first place because they banned YouTube already.
Oh, fair.
And I'm pretty sure they banned all the. I mean, no. I was able to listen to Spotify and Apple Podcasts when I was in China. And,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if any specific podcasts were blocked per se, but the ones that I were listening to were okay. Like the TED interview, TED Talks. That's how I actually got into this podcasting thing.
Are you trying to pull a Joe Rogan here? Get a $100 million deal with Spotify.
Yo, man, anybody could use $100 million, can't you?
Oh, Joe Rogan though, quality podcast, man.
You hear him? You listen to him?
Oh yeah, he talks I like that he invites just the most random guests. You'll talk about, you'll have some expert. I forgot what her name was, but she was a doctor, a PhD doctor that looked into gender studies, and she was also an MMA fighter. I forgot what her name was. She was an Asian MMA fighter, and they talked about the gender differences between male and female. How it's completely separate from the whole equality and opportunity. Obviously you're going to talk about gender, you're going to say everyone should be equal, and that's 100% true. But when you talk about physiological differences in terms of medical differences, it's a very important distinction, right? Because now you have they were talking about this one MMA fighter who was transgender, and he was originally a male, and then now she's a female. Yeah. And then she went into the ring with everyone without telling anyone that she was transgender, and she just dominated. Mm-hmm. Because you have a woman who has lived 30 years of her life with testosterone.
Mm.
And then she's a woman for a year. She still has the muscular build of a male, and she's fighting women. So that's dangerous,
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about contact sports like MMA, right? There's a chance that you could die. And that's why they stratify it by weight and by gender in the first place. Now, my question, I heard that podcast too. I actually bought her book, The End of Gender. And I was like,
oh, okay.
Yeah, because a lot of what she was saying was contrary to what my original beliefs were. And I thought, okay, what better way to educate them myself than to listen to someone who's on the complete opposite spectrum of the debate.
For sure.
And when it comes to that MMA, I have a few questions, right? It seems dangerous that someone who was a man for 30 years competing in a contact sport against other women who've been women for their entire lives might have an advantage that might also confer a risk of injury, right? Risk of serious harm. So my question would be, if they already stratified by weight, right? Then how much does that gender difference matter? So if you're taking a 65-pound man and a 65-pound woman who's in the peak physical form, right? They're both very low body fat content.
Right.
And then how big is the difference?
Well, I mean, in this case, well, I haven't really read into it, so I don't know the details or enough information to actually talk about it in detail. But I'm assuming that the gender difference isn't just muscle mass, right? Like, or maybe it is. Like, you have different weight distributions when it comes to males and females, right? Like, if you're talking about someone who is female, then yeah, they might be the same weight, but then you're gonna have that weight distributed differently. Like it's not going to be all muscle for a woman. It might be some of that weight might be, you know, breast tissue. It might be at the hips, right? Just because that's how women and males differ. And then, and I'm unsure about this, but is there a difference in muscle type for men? Like, would a male have more fast twitch versus, you know, like that kind of difference?
Right.
And if that plays a difference just because of testosterone, I don't know.
Gender
I don't know.
differences in muscle composition. I don't know. Maybe there's a thing. Data suggests that greater strength of the men was primarily due to larger fibers. The greater gender difference in the upper body strength can probably be attributed to the fact that women tend to have a lower proportion of their lean tissue distributed in the upper body. Okay.
So there is a difference then, hey?
Yeah. There's a very big difference in these larger fibers, and I'm guessing that's referring to like skeletal muscle, right? Which is like where the power comes from. Yeah, and there's also I think men exhibit faster reflexes on the whole, right?
Maybe I did hear one time that, like, for men, like, I think something about spatial awareness is usually also higher for men.
Spatial awareness, yeah.
Spatial awareness, yeah.
By spatial awareness, what do you mean though?
I mean, it's playing with that whole like stereotype that men are better at driving or like other stuff, but like I think it comes from the whole evolutionary like necessity for men to tend to be like hunter-gatherer, like hunters. So they have more acuity for spatial awareness, like their surroundings for female, whereas female exhibit more communication and emotional developmental capabilities than men.
How about those Amazonian women though, man? Like women were the hunters and gatherers of that society, weren't they?
That's true. Maybe like for them, they probably developed better spatial awareness than the men too. But like I think overall in the world, right?
Towering giants.
Oh, for sure.
Oppressing the men in the Amazonian society.
That's all evolutionary, right? I know maybe in like 100, 200 years, 300 years, this gender difference between men and female will also disappear.
Oh, you think so? I think the recent data from like the Scandinavian countries are kind of. You mean like in genetically?
Genetically, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because we're not there anymore. Now we live in a society where technology kind of allows us to overcome all those physical limitations, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't think women will necessarily develop physical capabilities matching men in terms of like these high performance sports.
or
What's
maybe
most likely going to happen is that men
devolve, yeah.
Yeah, not devolve, man.
No,
Just
we
better
won't
suited to the
those,
environment.
Yeah, we won't need those muscles anymore, and then it just becomes, if you think of like us, wearing glasses. Darwinism would say that we shouldn't be allowed to live. Like we are not fit to be of the living and pass on our genetic information, but here we are.
But science is so nuanced, man. Like I'm pretty sure that the study that I was just talking about with the differences in skeletal muscle, I'm sure they didn't take like high performance athletes and compare them, right? They just probably took random run of the mill sedentary typical people, men and women.
Maybe.
Yeah. And maybe in general in society, maybe men do more of like the heavy lifting jobs, and in a population statistic, maybe that's why they have longer fibers. You never You never know, man.
You never know. Yeah, it's there's so many factors when it comes to
Yeah.
genetic makeup and stuff like that.
There could also be like an argument to say that because these are high performance athletes, any differences observed in the general population might be amplified.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But hey, that's why you're in research and I ran away from research. I was like,
Yo, man.
I can't do this.
I feel like the trend is moving towards real AI-driven research. Have you heard of this? I think Microsoft has launched this company, Schrodinger or something like that.
No, I never heard of it.
I don't know. I haven't read it either. But my parents were talking about it, and they were super excited because they wanted to invest in it. And what it was this company was proposing to do the bulk of pharmaceutical discovery research.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So they had this machine, and in 1 week they could do the same amount of work that a PhD student might do in 4 years. So people were really interested in using this technology to screen tons and tons of data and do like all these research, like benchtop work, and find just. I mean, it's a scary time, man. My job is not secure anymore. No one's job is secure anymore.
No, no. Yeah, I was thinking about doing radiology too. I was radiology as a
It's not a good
specialty.
idea, man. That's like
It's
one of
not
the
a good
first.
idea.
Dennis Lowe was talking about radiology as being one of the first to probably go.
Yeah, I know radiologists and the anesthesiologists are all scared as well.
Oh man.
Pathology is also one of them that would, right? Because then you would just send tissue in and run a scan through it using AI, and then there we go. Pathologist done. Job is done.
I'm wondering though, like typically when you think of a doctor, you don't think of them as a technician, right?
Sure.
So there's a component of being a doctor that's translating the findings to language that a patient might understand, and maybe sometimes break some difficult news for them, or just reassure them that everything's okay.
Right.
So I'm wondering if these technologies won't replace their jobs, but really enhance the important aspects of the job because they'll understand the data.
Well, I think hopefully, and here's what I'm hoping is that for the next 30 to 40 years, like when we're in the workforce, right, AI will remain a tool rather than a replacement. Like maybe in the next 100, because even if the technology is there, for people to be fully confident in it to take over the job of a doctor, it would take quite a while.
Yeah, and to be confident that it can do the similar type of level of job.
Yeah, and I think right now with radiology, especially when you're talking about like AI, it's not replacing the doctor. It's simply AI is just better at detecting things than the human eye is. Like that's where we're at right now, from what I understand.
I see.
So like when doctors at least here at the U of A, when radiologists, and they talk about AI a lot as well, when they talk about AI, they're more talking about algorithms in order to check, whether or not that person has a tumor, right? The ones running the scans, the one who's making the decisions on surgery and doing the surgeries and doing the ultrasound and positioning everything, other than just kind of like using their eye to check, that's all done by the doctor. And then AI is just a better detector, I guess. So
and unbiased too, right?
Yeah. There's no like, bias based on past experiences and stuff like that. Because what they did find was like, what was it? AI would get it right like almost 100% of the time, and then radiologists would get it right like 6 out of 10 times.
Oh man.
But they have to do everything else.
6 out of 10 times they would be wrong.
They'd be right.
They'd be right.
They get it wrong like 4 out of 10 times or something like that.
Don't out your colleagues like that, man.
Well, I'm just throwing numbers right now. I'm just throwing random numbers, but it's significant in that way. But I think for now, at least, AI is more of a tool, right? It's more of a tool. It's nowhere near, in application, it's nowhere near where it can be to actually replace the human
side
of things. Yeah, maybe in 10 years it will, but then after 10 years, you're looking at like, okay, well, are people going to implement it? Maybe add another 10 years of implementation, another 10 years of trust to build for actually people to actually use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so maybe there does come a time though when AI can replace these jobs like radiology, histology, things like that. I'm wondering, pathology. Then hold on, I think my mic is peaking a little bit. Hello, still peaking. Hello. Okay, that's better. So I'm wondering, what was I talking about?
AI.
AI. Oh yeah. So if ever there does come a time when these jobs are replaced, then how willing is the medical community to find other specialties?
I don't know if you find other specialties. I think, well, what I think might end up happening is, one, you might need less doctors. That being said, there's a shortage right now. So like,
all for it.
Yeah, like like we don't output doctors to meet the demand of the growing population anyway. There might be less doctors and more people who are generalists, I guess. Right? Because if you're someone who's more like an internalist and like a family doc or frontline doc, right? Like you go through all of the diagnostics and you're like checking up on them and stuff like that, and then you have to send them off to a specialist. But instead of sending off to a specialist, now you're just sending them to a machine, and AI does all the readings for you, and then you sit there and interpret them.
That's a good point.
Right?
Maybe you can kind of sort of see what's something happened in medicine, like it happened in physics, with like the unification of theories, unification of jobs. You just
Right.
have this
Yeah.
one person working on the most important things.
Yeah.
Right?
So you might just have less specialists and just more generalists coming out.
Is that a good or bad thing? What do you think?
I mean, it's good for me. Because I
What's
want to
that?
be a generalist.
Oh, I see.
No, but I think it won't be a bad or a good thing, right? Like, I think it'll just be different. It'll be a different approach to medicine, and that's always been the case, right? Like, that's the same with every field. You know, you get new technology, you have to reinterpret the job. Like, you think about doctors, like hundreds of years ago, they were butchers.
Yeah,
Right?
that's true.
Your surgeon would also cut hair, and they were all the same thing. It wasn't until recently that surgeons became actual doctors and like it became a specialty, and that's with growing technology, understanding about the human body, right?
Yeah.
So
What was that
maybe,
thing called?
sure.
Ether, right? Ether. That was the first like real anesthetic.
Yes, possibly. I don't know.
And before then they would just gag
Yeah,
somebody, hold them down,
yeah. And people just die from shock.
cut off their leg. Oh God.
Gruesome stuff. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to it just because, as someone who's developed diagnostics to some degree in medical research, there's just so uncertainty, man, and the techniques are not always up to par. The interpretation of the data is not always correct. You have like these little nuances so if, for example, my assay, I would have to go in and count how many cells. Like that's the end point of the assay, was to count how many cells were in this little tube that I had.
Right.
And that would be, and then depending on how many cells you have, that would determine the outcome of the test, if it's positive or negative, right? If it's above 5,000 cells, it's positive. Below, then it's like negative. So what I would do is I would take a little bit of this tube, like 10 microliters, very small volume, and then I'd look at it under the microscope and count how many cells there are one by one. And usually there are maybe like 200, 300, 400 cells.
Oh God.
And then you have to do this in triplicate, right, in order to minimize the variation. Computers won't have to do that. They don't have to take a small part of this thing and then estimate how much is in this entire tube. What they can do is they can just fucking go through the entire tube.
They scan the entire thing.
You can scan the entire thing. You can use something like, flow cytometry. Yeah, so they can just suck that up. They can suck that bitch up, and then you're gonna have like an entire plate right? So you can have like
Right.
384 or whatever samples. You can probably design way bigger plates and run thousands and thousands of samples and run them. And you don't have to sit there like replacing the tubes, going under the microscope. And then you can also have AI interpret that data and then send it out. And then also they can update this like big database for the diagnostic. So you know how every diagnostic has like a positive predictive value and a negative predictive value?
Yep.
I'm wondering with the advent of AI, you can have real-time updates to how effective a diagnostic is. And you can see whether the trend increases or decreases over time, right? So you can see, yeah, I think there's a big application for that. And also, once you make a decision based on the diagnostic, let's say somebody else finds a new therapy, right? Then to pair with the diagnostic, then this AI algorithm can determine, oh, there is a better therapy out there, and then simultaneously send it out to every single doctor across the world. Whereas in the past, a doctor might have to go to a conference or be advertised to by pharmaceutical companies in order to learn about this new drug. The danger is the AI is being also targeted by pharmaceutical companies, right? And that could influence what kind of drugs they push.
True.
So then you might have this emergence of a Facebook advertisement type situation where you have foreign influence from all these different companies just competing, and maybe you have the person with the most money
Right.
pushing for a drug that's not necessarily the best option out there.
Yeah. Although I feel like that happens already.
Yeah.
Right? If you just think about the fentanyl, like the pharmaceutical companies don't need the AI to do that.
Yeah, they're a good machine already. Hello, Patrick? Hello? Hello, there you are.
And we're back.
And we're back. Wow, technical issues. Woo!
Yeah.
Podcasting. What were we talking about?
Pharmaceutical companies and AI, I think, was the thing we left off at.
You said that pharmaceutical companies are doing that already?
They do that already. I mean, not so much like here. I actually don't know, but like you always hear in the States, right? Like pharmaceutical companies buying doctors' lap dances and like lobster dinners for them to push their drugs, and then you ended up having, yeah.
What? Where was this?
Yeah.
What?
It's just in the States, right? Like you can search that up, like all the different methods that they use to bribe doctors in order to push their own drugs, and that's how you got fentanyl. That whole fentanyl crisis. Because you think about like fentanyl is the strongest opioid currently available on market. It is synthetically made, and it's so strong that it's only supposed to be prescribed to cancer patients. Like, they use fentanyl when nothing else works. And now you have doctors, or you had doctors in the States pushing fentanyl, like a fentanyl lollipop or like a fentanyl pill or something, for something as little as like a toothache.
Oh my God. Really?
That was the whole fentanyl crisis.
Are they still doing that now? There's no way they can do that now, right?
I don't think they're doing that now because it came to light how bad it was.
Yeah.
But for a period of like a couple of years, the fentanyl crisis was a huge thing, and that's why naloxone kits are now readily available all throughout Canada, at least, and also in the States. Right? You go to a pharmacist, they just give you a naloxone kit.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Let me read this. Stripper turned pharma exec gave doctor a lap dance to get him to prescribe drugs, officials say.
There we go.
I mean, let me call out this physician. Physician Paul Madison. Paul Madison is suspected of taking more than $70,000 in bribes from a drug company to churn out prescriptions for its highly addictive fentanyl spray. There we go.
Fentanyl, man. Fentanyl.
So I was actually going to ask you, what do you think the cause of this thing is? And clearly there's one cause right here. The fentanyl is being pushed in ways that are bribing physicians.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
when they shouldn't be, right? Fentanyl is it's like the last line of opioids that you should be using.
Yeah.
Because like
So,
I remember looking at like a what was it, like a picture, and they showed you a picture of a penny,
okay.
right? The little penny, and then if you took crystallized fentanyl just enough to like cover maybe a tenth of that penny, that can kill someone. That can kill multiple people, or it can kill an elephant or something. So people are like just handing that out, and it's
Well, how much are they handing out?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But clearly it's an issue. It was on the mainstream news for
so bad.
years,
Yeah.
and people just kept taking these drugs.
Yeah.
And even like softcore drugs. Maybe not softcore, but other drugs were being cut with fentanyl because it was
Yep.
cheaper, it's more effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think heroin was the main one.
Yeah.
Heroin was a big one.
What was that company that started pumping out like oxycodone? Really high profile pharmaceutical company.
I don't remember. I should know it though. I don't remember though. You gonna Google it?
Yeah, I'm gonna Google it because I think it's important to call out companies, man. Because a lot of these companies think they can just hide behind, like Purdue.
Purdue, and I think Purdue is the same company that pumps out all the naloxone kits.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, so they manufactured this crisis and they're profiting off of it?
Yeah.
Oh my God, man.
It's real bad. It's real bad.
Is that true?
Fact check that. I think they were producing a bunch of the naloxone kits.
Hold on. Purdue naloxone. Okay, so what they're doing here, it seems like, is kind of like management of what the public opinion of them is. So they
For
said,
sure.
because they've been widely criticized, right, for deceptively marketing its highly addictive painkiller, and for its role in spurring the current nationwide epidemic of opioid abuse and overdose deaths. So now it's moving ahead with a drug to be an antidote to the opioid overdoses, and they're doing this as a way as like a, what do you call it, make up like for their role
like
in the
damage control.
crisis.
Yeah.
But they're profiting off of it. So why don't they just tell it as it is, man? Like, why don't they just tell it as it is?
Yeah. They're making money off of it too. So
no matter what you say, if you look at the stats, they made money off of making this crisis because clearly the punishments handed out by the federal government don't even come close to the amount of money they made from the crisis. And then they manufacture this solution and then also profit off it and then say we're all good because we're solving the problem. What kind of dystopian fucking society are we living in, man?
Oh, we're already there, man. We're already there.
Fuck. Yo, that's why I'm like so glad that all of my friends who have gone into medicine, including you, they're like knowledgeable about these things.
Oh yeah, I enjoy it too. Like I definitely think the next generation of doctors will be different from the old ones.
Like,
I mean,
what
Canada's
was
not
it?
as bad.
What's the difference, man? Like, is it that the older doctors just weren't informed, or like what is the difference?
Well, I think the Purdue issue is for the most part it's a states thing. Like you don't hear that as much with Canada, at least.
Really? I thought
I think
fentanyl
so.
was a huge crisis in Canada too.
Was it?
Canada. Yeah, man. Like
It was in Vancouver. Yeah, definitely in Vancouver. But I don't know if it was due to prescription drugs or was it because it was being cut with other drugs, and that's why it was a bad thing in Canada.
Huh.
But I mean, regardless, I think with our generation, we're a little bit more socially responsible, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of how we were raised. Like, people complain about how our generation's super PC, and like how cancel culture is such a big thing, and everyone's just so much more socially aware and responsible for what they do, whether it be for gender, race, environment, or any other cause.
Mm.
And definitely, I think there's a commentary on how um, the over PC culture has a negative impact, but at the same time, it does mean that when you have people going into these professional roles, whether that be government or medicine or healthcare,
Mm.
it does give me a little bit of hope when it comes to like people being responsible, right?
Yeah.
And I think now with universities too, they're trying to screen for that. Like more than ever, the whole idea that marks don't matter, and it's more about what you do with your life and what your personality is like,
Mhm.
and what actually makes for a good doctor. And that's communication, morality, dedication to the job. Like those are going to play more important than getting a 4.0 GPA.
I mean, I think a 4.0 GPA is reflective of some of that too.
It is, but I think, and I don't know if it's going to be implemented, but I remember hearing that some of the universities in Canada are trying to step away from the GPA, not step away from the GPA scale, but like understanding that if you have a 3.5 and above,
Yeah.
more than likely you are smart enough to be a doctor. Like
Okay.
like you're smart. And then the other things, like someone getting a 3.5 versus like a 3.7 versus a 4.0 might not be intelligence, it just might be social economical background, right? Someone with a lot more resources can dedicate a lot more time to getting that 4.0 rather than someone else who has to work all the time. And of course, there's also lots of factors going against that, but that's why you have the MCAT, the the extracurriculars and everything. Like when you combine everything together and you look at a 3.5 GPA versus a 4.0 GPA, it seems like it matters less, I guess.
Here's my opinion, man. I, I mean, clearly I have a degree in education and the progression of the medical field. Clearly I'm an expert on that. So, so
I was
take
like,
my,
is he being sarcastic?
yeah, of course I'm
We
being
graduated from
sarcastic.
physiology, buddy.
Yeah. So I think it's a supply and demand question. There's a huge
Mm,
supply of students, a huge demand of people wanting to become medical students, but there's not a huge supply. Training medical students costs a lot of money,
right.
a lot of taxpayers' money,
Yeah.
and it when you have that kind of competition, you want to take the best doctors, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to take the best doctors, and people can say things on their extracurricular that aren't true, right?
Fair.
And
Yeah.
you can have like, sure, you can have differences in socioeconomic class contributing to this difference in GPA, but I think it contributes more to a difference in your extracurricular activities. Don't
Mm-hmm.
you think so? If you're worried, if you have to work another fucking job to support your family while you're studying in your undergrad, as so many people did, and then they try to compete with these, I'm not trying to downplay how hard they worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, like more privileged students who don't have to put in that extra work into making sure that your family has food on the table, making sure that you guys have electricity, making sure that um, your brother can go through school, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like what they're doing is they're coddling students. They're saying they're giving excuses because students are complaining about the difficulties of having to achieve all of these things. And yeah, it's fucking hard. Of course it's fucking hard. You're competing against, no matter what you how you calculate the GPA or your extracurricular activities, you got to show them that you're fucking better than 99% of people who are applying, maybe 90%. I don't know the exact numbers, right?
Oh, I mean, for sure, for sure. Like, definitely, when you're trying to get like a select your med students, you're going to pick like the top of the top anyway. But I think what this was trying to do, it's not that GPA wouldn't be taken into account. I think it was more of an issue of like, hey, like if you have like a 3.5 and above, you can get an interview. The door is open for you to get a chance to get it. Like, I think like if you look at the past, it might have been an issue of like people who are, if you didn't get like a 3.8 and above, you wouldn't get an interview.
I see.
Whereas now they're going to interview more people. They're going to interview, you know, someone with a 3.5 and everything else is like, if everything else is like outstanding. And then if you're talking about extracurriculars too, like work is taken into account of that, right? Like if you had to work to survive and you have all these life experiences, one, that shows up in your extracurriculars as your work. And two, when you're in your interview, you come off as more mature.
Do you? Is that backed by science though? If you spend your time working at a fucking McDonald's, are you do you have more maturity than someone who spent a year abroad in Africa because they wanted to help build wells in the pygmies and like build schools for underprivileged kids? Like if you're
but if you're doing that, obviously that's more experience than someone who's just working at McDonald's. Right?
Yeah,
but like,
that's what I'm saying, man.
But what I mean is like, so to give some statistics, when I got in, I was 25. It was my third attempt to get into medicine. And I'm the average.
Okay.
I was the average age, and I had the average number of attempts. So if you look at my class, I think only about 20% of people got in after their undergrad. And then a lot of my friends in medicine, some of them were engineers for 12 years. They worked in pharmacy for 9 years. They had their whole undergrad. Like that's the shift, right? Like Annie is currently in her first year of residency. When she got in, they were still looking at super GPA heavy. They were letting people get into medicine after their second year. Anson got in after his second year, right?
I see.
So I think back then they were looking at like those, you know, high GPA, super smart people. And now they're trying to find people who are well-rounded, right? So you are still trying to get the best of the best. But now I think the understanding is that GPA doesn't mean the best of the best, right? You're looking at work experience. You're looking at life experience. You're looking at how well they perform at an interview. And someone with more life experience would have a better shot at the interview.
Right.
Like, I remember like trying to like help some of my friends who are younger get into medicine and help them with their interviews. And these were people who haven't applied yet. Like they're like first or second year students. They're nowhere near applying for medicine, but they just wanted to see how a interview would play out. So I gave them some random questions that I found online, and you can see a difference in experience. Right? Like when you find someone who, let's say for you and me, like we've learned so much after graduation, right? Whether it be from your master's to going to work in China, you uprooted your life, went to China where you don't speak the language, and now you have a fiance and you're living in Hong Kong and getting your PhD. Like that wealth of experience from those couple of years compared to someone who spent their entire life just kind of like, hey, I'm going to go to high school, then university, and now I'm applying for medicine. There's a stark contrast.
Just in case Ellie listens to this, no longer fiance. We're legally married in order for her. Yeah.
Oh.
Because the wedding's later, but we're legally married.
Oh, congrats! I didn't know that.
Thank you.
Yeah. You motherfucker.
I don't know what the fucking language is. I don't know, like, if you can say.
Tell us. You don't put these things in the group chat. You casually drop that you have a fiance, and now you casually drop that you're legally married on a podcast. Like,
why not, man?
Okay, other context, Ellie. Ellie, if you're listening to this, we found out that you were engaged because Han just randomly just said, like, hey, I have to talk to my fiance about this in the middle of a group chat. And we were like, wait, hold up. Fiance? And he's like, yeah, I proposed like a month ago. A month ago? We were like, where's the wedding? It's like, it was just in China. It's like, do you have groomsmen? He's like, no, we're not gonna do that. I was like, you're doing the groom. We're coming. We're flying over. Like,
Yo, man, with the whole coronavirus situation, though, it's like completely changed all of our plans.
oh, for
Holy
sure.
shit. I can't even go
Yeah.
back for my own wedding.
Well,
Yeah,
I've
she
seen
might.
so many people get married here in Edmonton too, and it's just like in their houses, like
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of their friends get ordained, and then they just hold the ceremony at house, and then they're legally married, and they'll wait next year for the party.
yeah, man. I mean, if we didn't get legally married, then she wouldn't have been able to come to Hong Kong. And actually, her hometown is in
Oh,
her like official district, like is Hubei, right? And the capital of
yeah,
Hubei is Wuhan, the
yeah.
center of the coronavirus epidemic. So we were actually in Wuhan, and we got legally married there before the fucking coronavirus even hit, because
Nice.
we were planning for her to come to Hong Kong.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah, yeah.
thankfully we did all of that, because if we didn't, then I don't know, man, we'd be separated for years probably.
Oh, so she's Miss Ellie Lee now, hey?
No, she kept her last name. What age do you think this is?
That's what? That's fair.
She's, yeah, man.
Actually, I don't even know why I said that. In China, you keep your last name anyway. So
Oh, really? Oh, I
yeah,
didn't even know that was standard
your
practice.
Chinese name never changes.
Oh,
Her Chinese, so she like her Chinese name. Even if she decided to take your last name in Western culture, it's very likely she wouldn't have changed her Chinese last name.
oh, I see. I
Yeah,
see. Yeah, but how
yeah.
does it work for kids? Like, do they take the father side or the mom side?
They take the father side. Yeah, they would
Oh,
take your.
okay. Okay, I see.
Or I mean,
Interesting.
it's 2020. You might just hyphenate it.
Hyphen.
Yeah, like
L-
Lee, whatever.
Jolie. That sounds like a
Joe,
name, man.
Joe Lee. That sounds better than Lee Joe. So
Yeah, Lee Joe sounds kind of weird.
yeah.
Apologies to all the Lee Joes out there.
No, fuck those guys.
Yeah, man, that Lee Joe. Like, oh my god,
I'm gonna cancel this podcast right now.
Coalition of Lee Joes against the HanChat podcast. Man, we got off to a little bit of a tangent. What were we talking about before this?
Oh yeah. Going back, like I guess the whole idea of maturity and how it plays a role in
Right.
doctors and how they're switching that, right?
Mm.
Because I think Western society's doctor pathway is so much different from the rest of the world. The rest of the world, it's like you go through high school, and then you're in, and then you spend the next 6 to 8 years in med school. Whereas here, they want you to get a degree, they want you to get experience before you get in. So yeah, no, like there's a big contrast, and some of the people that I was helping with their interview questions, their answers were always very like narrow-minded. I think as you get older, you kind of realize that you just let people live. And
What do you
people
think that
be
is?
autonomous.
I've realized that too. Like, just in the last few years, I feel like I'm so different than what I was.
Well, because I think you meet so many more people and different people.
Mm.
So like, imagine growing up, right? Like we went to Vernon Barford, you're with a bunch of like nerdy Asians. You go to Old Scona, you're with a bunch of nerdy Asians. You go to high school or university.
Can you put that mic right up to your mouth?
Yeah. Like you
Okay.
go to junior high and you're with a bunch of nerdy Asians.
Yeah.
You go to Old Scona High School and then you're with a bunch of nerdy Asians. You go to university, who are you hanging out with? A bunch of nerdy Asians. And
Probably the same group from high school.
Same group from high school, exactly. And you make new friends and they're just similar to, but I think once you get older and you start working, right? Like you have to you meet coworkers and coworkers are going to be different.
Mm.
And then you go to staff functions and then you start dating more. You meet your partner's friends, the friends of friends. And you kind of realize that there's so many different paths to lives and there's never one exact path, right? You grew up essentially living under the dogma that your parents set out, and then you think that there's always one way to do something, and that your opinion matters the most. And then once you get older, one, you get too tired to really keep up with all the different trends and opinions anymore, and the second is you've lived long enough to realize there's so many different people out there and they all have valid points. So at the end of the day, it's like we don't need the same opinion for us to like talk or be friends, right? You can
Yeah.
live your life and I can live my life, and then there are certain areas where we meet in middle ground. Whatever we don't meet on middle ground, you just kind of let go.
Yeah, we can agree to disagree, as our
Yeah.
principal, Dr. Yanu, always talked about.
Oh
Theory
yeah,
of knowledge
yeah.
class.
Oh my god, we gave him so much shit, and then you get older, you're like, that man had some good points, you know? That man knew how to live.
That's the only class that I still remember to this day.
Yeah.
I don't remember many classes in my high school. Maybe
Yeah.
computer science, because we were like, I was fingering my girlfriend at the time, like under the table. It's like my first experience.
You just casually dropped that too.
And 7 a.m. classes, man. 7 a.m. classes.
Oh, I know who this
Yeah.
is too.
We're
Oh.
and just like, I don't know. It's just a different time. And I clearly remember that because of how taboo it was and how bad I felt.
Yeah, but then now you're just kind of like,
Now I'm just like, too much work.
things stop mattering, you know? Things don't matter anymore. Have you read the book The Subtle Age of Not Giving a Fuck?
No,
You should
but I've
read
seen
it.
that book. I
It's
read the
pretty
first few
good.
pages. It seems like it's like the culmination of woke culture, though, and that made me very opposed to it. I just had like this bias against it.
What do you mean woke? What's your definition of woke culture, though?
It's like, oh my God, we figured out what the world really is. Everyone who came before us, across cultures, all their
Okay.
traditional beliefs, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What we know is the truth.
See, and I'm gonna tell you, if you just read a couple pages more, he goes into the whole idea that like all of these self-help like books are just, they tell you how to live. It's all bullshit, you know.
Okay.
And it goes into like the idea that the only way to live is just to not care so much, you know. Like as you grow older and you get less energy, you figure out yourself what matters to you, and you put all of your fucks into those few things. Everything else you can live without, right? And it kind of reflects on the whole woke culture that you're just talking about, how everyone's like, oh my God, I need to be pro-choice, and then I need to fight for that, and I need to fight for gender equality, and I need to fight for racial equality, and the sea turtles are dying, and global warming's happening, and like my neighbor didn't put up like a LGBTQ whatever flag, and oh my God, someone today didn't use the right pronoun for me.
Some of those things are important though, man.
It is, but it's not all important at the same time for everyone. Right? Like, should I be offended that someone didn't ask for my pronoun? It doesn't matter to me, so no. Right? Do I respect if someone else wants me to ask? Of course, right? That I should respect how they want to live. But does it really matter to me personally? No, right? Like, what does matter to me? Right? Like, vaccines matter to me, so I'll fight for that. You know, sea turtles are great. You know, I love sea turtles. I'll fight for those motherfuckers. But like,
what have you done for sea turtles?
I bought a metal straw like everyone else.
Oh man, yo, you just called me out right there. I didn't buy a metal straw. I'm killing sea turtles here.
You bought 100 plastic straws, took one and threw the rest in the ocean.
And I feel terrible. Whatever. I don't use straws. Like, I don't use straws. I drink from a cup. There we go.
Oh, there we go. That's what you did. That's what you did. Yeah. I got one of these. Here. You know, this is reusable.
All right.
Yeah, but yeah, it's the whole idea that you just learn to care about what's important to you, and you learn to respect everything else, but it's not something that you worry about.
Yeah.
And that goes the same for like everything, right? Like work, dating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just learn like what's important, what's not.
Is that the only idea in that entire book? Should I still go read it, or did you just kind of summarize it all?
I pretty much summarized it all, but like it's a
Okay.
fun read. The guy's funny, so
No, I do like some books that are just like, they just have this aspect of humor to them, right? They don't take it too
that's the
seriously.
whole. It reads like a sarcastic rant,
Nice. All right.
so it's a fun read. It's a fun read.
Hey man,
That
I'll give it a go.
that goes into the topic you suggested earlier this morning about career paths in life. A little nice little segue there.
Okay. Yeah, I can
What did you
work
want
with
to talk
that.
about? What did you want to talk about in regards to that?
Well, I kind of, so I did some reflecting, right? I did a lot of reflecting because when so initially I was like, okay, let's talk about the major issues. Let's talk about, like mail order brides. Let's talk about the gender debate. Let's talk about Uyghurs in Xinjiang, And then I was like, I don't know about you, but I'm not an expert in any of these things.
No.
I was reading, I was listening to audiobooks, I was watching documentaries, and then I realized every time I watch something, I learn something new, which means that I don't know shit.
I mean, that's still a good topic, You can still talk about this thing. You have a valid opinion. This becomes a podcast for like your regular Joe,
I guess. I just feel disingenuous giving an opinion based on an incomplete data set. I don't know, maybe that's
fair.
just me.
Yeah.
But I think I was thinking like, okay, maybe we should talk about something that's more closer to home for both of us, right? And I was like, okay, what are the similarities and what are the differences? Okay, well, we both had very similar lives growing up, and we both are in like the medical sciences. But a difference is that whereas I didn't get into medicine, you did, right? You persevered and you made it through, right? And I'm not saying that I regret my decision to give up on medicine, because I think I'm in a good place now. I'm at a better place than I've ever been in my life, right? But it got me to think like, what was it that got me to this point in my life? And how do I rationalize that? And I realized that some things just can't be rationalized. And I wrote like an excerpt. Do you mind if I like read it?
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'll get the popcorn.
Okay, sounds good. So title is My Pursuit of Happiness. So for as long as I can remember, I wanted to become a doctor when I grew up. I had a lot of reasons for it throughout the years, even though I didn't know if all the reasons made a lot of sense. Even from the time I was in junior high, I was already convinced that becoming a doctor was my only path forward. I remember telling someone at my church that I wanted to be a doctor because every job becomes laborious eventually. So why not pick a job that gives you more meaning and some stability, But clearly this is not something that a middle schooler would come up with on his own, right? So I think I just heard this from somewhere and I was like, oh, that person's right. That is a good reason. And at this point, I didn't know anything about what having a job meant. My first job was working at McDonald's in my first year of college. So I think I just had this like warped idea of what success and happiness was. And I kind of clung to it without a really good reason. And all around me, because the adults saw that it was a decent pathway for life, especially coming from like an Asian family, they didn't question that I wanted to become a doctor. So in high school, the reasons that I told myself that I wanted to become a doctor was that I wanted to make my parents happy. I said to myself that I was going to make my mom and dad proud. I could support my family back in Korea who are not doing too well. And I would be able to set a good example for my brother. But in retrospect, I actually think this reasoning was kind of an escape from the suffering that I anticipated if I didn't achieve the kind of success that was associated with becoming a doctor. I didn't do well in school at times, and my dad would spend many nights lecturing me and going crazy with frustration in the process because I was a terrible listener. I don't even remember most of these conversations, even though it feels like I had about 100 of them. All I wanted was to avoid having any more of these lectures, and my solutions were to agree with everything he was saying, promising that I would change, but just continued to hide what I was doing, which was playing games all day, watching pornography, whatever. So I got really good at lying, and I lied a lot to my parents. And I even hid the fact that I had a girlfriend for a very long time. In the back of my mind, I had this idea, though, that even though I was living like this, as long as I became a doctor, none of this will matter, because I'll have that kind of success that everybody was expecting of me, that I was expecting of me, and I'm not going to be experiencing any more of this suffering once I achieve that. So we move into undergrad, and obviously, in order to get into medicine, you need to do volunteering work. I told people that I wanted to help other people in a way that made good use of my academic strengths while pursuing a medical career as a doctor. But I think there was kind of a cognitive dissonance going on. Because I needed to become a doctor, I needed to do volunteering work. And because I was doing volunteering work, I think I believed that I was doing that volunteering work in order to help people, right? So that kind of purpose and drive, it kind of went out of control. And at some point, I think I gained some sort of like megalomania, where I thought I could go and solve homelessness. This is how delusional I was. Like, I was 20 years old. I know nothing about the world, and I think I can solve homelessness, right? Remember Live Free
I
Edmonton?
remember that. I remember that year.
And by the way, he also wants to be a doctor.
Yeah.
So, because solving homelessness is not good enough on its own. So, of course, my grades kind of crashed. They were crap, and I almost got kicked out of the honors physiology program. I developed depression. I couldn't get out of bed most days. And I think, and at some point, my parents found out about my grades, and they lectured me, right? And I just remembered all those lectures that I had, and I couldn't say anything. I wanted to just avoid having any more of these lectures. So I pulled myself back up temporarily so that I can avoid having more of these lectures. And I did so because I still had this delusion that as long as I got into medical school, everything was going to be okay. But of course, I didn't get into medical school, so I went to grad school. So in grad school, I told myself this fucked up argument that I didn't want to waste my efforts over the years. I didn't put all this effort in for nothing. But at this point, the delusion of getting into medical school was starting to fade. Reality hit. And of course they wouldn't take someone like me into medical school. Think about what I said about my entire life growing up. Like, it's not the right reasons for getting into medical school. And of course I was an immature kid. So this loose dream of happiness that was tied to me getting into medical school was fading. And I just fell back into my depression. I didn't know what to do. I didn't care. At some point, I actually passed out because I didn't drink enough water. I was dehydrated. I didn't care about my health. I didn't care about fucking drinking water. But I still held on to the idea of getting into medical school. But after a while, after being in denial for so fucking long, there comes a point when you just have to face reality, right? And hold on, my phone's ringing. So I clung to anything that might validate my life up until that point. And a research career seemed to fit the bag pretty well, right? Because I was already on the path. I was already in grad school. Actually, when I made the decision to actually give up medicine, though, it was pretty liberating, which is not something I expected. But it makes sense because all the pressure on myself to get into medical school and to fulfill this, like, some great purpose for myself, that was gone, right? I could start over from scratch. And I mean, how fucking privileged was I, right? Maybe I'm part of the 1% that can actually start over from scratch. In most parts of the world, my life might have just ended right there, right? Mm-hmm. If my parents weren't supportive, I don't know, maybe I would have committed suicide, right? I don't know, maybe I would have gone down that road. But anyway, after I graduated with the master's, I was looking for opportunities to validate my life, and I was pretty eager to ditch that former life. I was starting to recover from my depression, and I thought that, transition might do me some good. I wanted a fresh start. Actually, at this point, I started, like, really getting into reincarnation manga and reincarnation anime, finding success in some sort of second life. I look for like role-playing games that would allow me to feel like that desire that I had to start over, but nothing really did it for me because those are only transient.
Is that why you made that slime manga?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you still remember that.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember it.
Coffee and slime.
Coffee and slime.
Some dude dies and comes back as a fucking slime in an RPG dungeon game.
Yeah.
It was an escape, man.
Yeah, for sure.
And but you know, my ex-supervisor, Dave, he actually gave me the opportunity to start over. So I went to China, and my life took a big turn there because I was in like a new environment, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have my parents who I needed to hide myself from. No one around me had a preconceived notion of who I used to be. Right? I had a good opportunity to move forward in my career, something that I hadn't really experienced because I just thought that I was going to be in medical school and I wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
And I met Ellie, and she was also in some sort of transitionary period. Man, honestly, I don't know what I did for her, man. Like, I don't know why she fell in love with me, but she's like the best fucking thing that ever happened to me. She's like,
oh, that's good to hear.
She was so grounded. She was able to call out any bullshit that I had. And I think she kind of affirmed to me that I was moving forward in a good direction, right? So from there, everything just kind of changed. And now I'm in a good place where I've put that medical school degree, that dream of being a doctor behind me.
Right. Damn. Yeah. I knew half the shit that you're talking about, but I never knew like the whole depression thing that you were going through. I just remember you trying to save the world back when we were undergrad, and there were just all of these different initiatives you were trying to throw.
Yo, what did you think about that during that time? Because I have a very biased view of how I was.
I mean, I knew you were going through some shit. Like, I knew this was not natural and there was something else going on. And I'm like, Han's struggling, man. And I was like, you kept asking me to help you with those stuff. It's like, I'll help you as much as I can, buddy, but I don't know what I can do for you, bud. But I think, yeah, because I think we both kind of went through very similar lives up until maybe graduation. Hey,
yeah, you think so?
Yeah, like, I mean, like, I think a lot of people can, me as well, can really relate to the idea that, you know, growing up, you never really understand whether or not your motivations are truly your own, or if it's just to fulfill some sort of promise that you made your parents or some expectation, right? Like similarly, like you're the oldest son in like the family. Like you're expected to be the one to pass down or carry on the name, to take care of the parents, you know, the fail safe in case your little brother fails as well, right? And it's always that pressure to be successful and everything, and you grow up with that mentality. And then when you hit university, like, are you there because you are actually passionate about something? Are you there because your parents told you that's the only option? Like, you never really know. You never really know. And I think like both of us had that girlfriend issue, hey?
Oh yeah, hiding it from your parents.
Well, I didn't hide it from my parents, and I got the shitter for that one because they were not accepting. So I think where we kind of split off was that for me, my kind of awakening, like my eye-opening moment was actually after graduation. When I jumped onto a master's just because I was terrified of what to do with my life if I wasn't continuing my education, right? It was always like, it's either you get into medicine and what else, right? I wasn't going to be an engineer, wasn't going to be a lawyer. Maybe I didn't want to be a dentist. It was always like medicine or bust.
Right.
So what's the next best option? Okay, maybe I get my PhD.
And if you don't do medicine, then you feel like a fucking loser, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of that, and I'll get into it, like my experience a little bit, but I think a lot of that comes because the motivation to become a doctor, to do all that stuff, didn't come from within. It was always external, right? Because I myself can accept if I failed at something, if it was something that I wanted to do, because then I know I put my effort in, right? It was something that I chose to do. Whereas, disappointing your parents, disappointing friends, family, like, and we were in the same boat, right? We watched all of our friends get in after their second year, and then we get into our masters and we're sitting there, we're just stalling for time, trying to get in. And for me, that's why I went into the masters, just because I just didn't know what else to do. Do I like research? No, I absolutely hate it. Oh my God. Like I was so bad at it because I hate it so much. I got fired.
I thought you left.
No, I got fired.
Oh my God.
Like the project failed, and it was just kind of like, yeah. Well,
And your prof fired you?
Yeah.
Yo, that's fucked up, man.
I was pretty shit though. I was a pretty shitty student because I wasn't the same as everyone else where they'd be like super like my project was weird too. It was kind of like I was expected to do surgery on rats and mice, and my days were literally I would wake up, go to the lab at 7 a.m, begin the surgery, start the experiment at 10, finish 12 hours later. And during that time, every single day, I couldn't eat.
What?
Because my experiment involved me injecting a variety of different drugs to either dilate or constrict the blood vessel every 5 minutes.
Oh my God.
I couldn't walk away from that. So I was fasting.
Vessels are small. So I understand.
Yeah. And the surgery was inserting tubes into those vessels. So imagine taking like opening up like a mouse's like femoral artery and trying to insert an even smaller tube through that so that you can read the hemodynamics. Another one to drain all the blood out, and another one to inject drugs in.
Huh.
So that was like every day for me. And then after that, on the weekends, I'd work at the swimming pool because I enjoyed rolling around in cash. It was fun, but but I wasn't passionate about it. So I burnt out so quickly. And I was like, why am I doing this? And then the prof, like the project failed, and the prof essentially fired me, but he said he would help me get into another research project if I wanted to with a different prof, right? Like, and then I was like, you know what? I don't think I can do it, right? The motivation wasn't there.
Right.
And during that time, like I got kicked out of my house. Well, I left my house because I couldn't deal with the whole living with, like the interracial girlfriend and the parents kind of giving me shit for it. I moved out, and then she broke up with me literally the day I signed the lease, which is bullshit. But but there was a period of time where I guess I was not accountable to anyone, right? Like I wasn't at home anymore. I was doing a master's, and then I got fired. So what else could I do? So for 2 years, all I did was I taught swimming. Like that was the only thing I needed to do. So like, and I became friends with my coworkers, and they're a motley crew of different people. And for me, that during that time, I kind of felt stagnant, and I think that's something that always bothers me, like stagnation. Like every day doing, like teaching swimming was just so. I wasn't moving forward, and I hated myself for that. So it was about that time where I kind of realized, like, okay, well now I have to figure out who I am. Right? Like there's no one telling me what I need to do anymore. I can just start off fresh. So I went back and I did, you remember when I did Isaac?
Yeah.
I went back and did it again. This time I was like, okay, now my goals is just to work on myself. So I was like, I'm going to become an executive. I'm going to become a VP. I'm going to run this program. I'm going to see where this takes me. Right.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I was the oldest one in the group. So I was very different from the rest of the crew. But yeah, I did the VP ship. I sent a whole bunch of people on exchange. Our Edmonton got chapter of the year that year from how well our team ran.
Congratulations.
Yeah, because I think like, you know, and then did a whole bunch of conferences, like ran conferences, got into a relationship, got out of a relationship, and I just kind of lived a period of life where everything that I did was for myself. I didn't have to worry about anyone else. It was just me left to my own devices. And I think it took that for me to kind of learn that, one, you know, like you got to take accountability for your life, right? Like, because I think what I kept doing was I kept making excuses for failures. Like I failed, and it was like, is this person's fault? It was like, I never wanted to do this in the first place. It was always my parents' choice. And that just kind of begot more failure. So
Of
once I
course,
kind of
because you don't feel the
realized
problem. Because
you don't,
you lie to yourself.
yeah, you lie to yourself. Exactly. There's no accountability to your actions. And then during that time, I kind of also kind of got out of the mentality that everyone has to have the same opinion. So, you know, I was like, yeah, I guess, you know, my parents, they grew up the way they did. It's not my place to change them. It's more just kind of to live my life, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay for me to not meet all their expectations,
Yeah.
right? And at the end of the day, they say all these things, but at the end of the day, their expectations is that you live a good and happy life. So what does that mean for me, right? And once I did all of that, I went back to myself and I was like, what do I want? I applied for education. I applied for physical therapy, occupational therapy, business. I applied for nursing. I applied for a whole bunch of things, and I canceled all my applications because I was like, I don't want any of those things. So I was like, okay, what do I want? One, I wanted to retry and do a master's because now it's for me, right? I'm not doing this because I'm scared of failure. I'm doing this because, like, hey, this might be good for my career. I want this now. And I want this in a field that I am actually passionate about. So I applied for a master's in pediatrics and or biogenetics, microgenetics.
Cool.
Yeah. And I got it. But then I told the prof, I was like, hey, the other thing I wanted was, hey, I want medicine. Like, I think at the end of the day, that would be the only thing that I would personally be happy with getting.
Right.
And if I failed, right? Because then it's on me. Like, I'm taking accountability for my actions now. So like, but hey, why not try? Why not try like one more time? And then if I fail, whatever, I'll keep doing what I'm doing and I'll try again. Right.
Yeah.
So I applied, told the prof, and bless her, she was super nice about this because I hear horror stories of profs not letting their graduate students apply because they want to keep them in the lab, right? But my prof was just kind of like, hey, you know what? Like, let's start your master's in September. Wow. Like, just volunteer in the lab, get used to the lab, start your project now, but we won't officially make you a graduate student until September. So you know whether or not you got in.
Okay.
So I got in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got in. Like, oh my God. I was surprised too, but like, yeah, but I think once I took accountability for my future and my career and kind of decided that, you know, whatever path I chose, as long as I was trying to move forward, would be the right one, regardless of what my parents thought.
Yeah.
I think that lifted a huge burden off of me.
Yeah.
And then now, yeah, like similar to you, like now I'm in a good place, and it's been good. Yeah.
Yo, I gotta say, like, we haven't had a real conversation in such a long time. Like, we've known each other in junior high school, went to the same university, and then these past few years we've kind of like fallen off. And
that's true. Yeah.
I can just see. I gotta say, man, you've changed. You changed a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're different. In a good way.
So have you. Honestly, I think the last time we actually spoke was in Kate's, right before you were about to leave for China the first time.
You're right. Yeah. I was having a coffee.
That was the last time you spoke.
2 years ago.
That was when I applied for my master's too.
Oh, I see.
I went in for the interview that day. Yeah.
Man.
Damn. Whoa, full circle now. Hey? Full circle.
Yeah, man.
Holy shit.
2 years.
But yeah, it's really interesting to see how much
You've matured so much.
everyone's. I mean, so have you, buddy. So have you.
Have I?
Yeah, I mean, you sound more sure of yourself, especially now that you're in a better place. Like you know what your future is like. And I remember, like when we were in undergrad, it was always up in the air, right? It was up in the air for all of us.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We
That
didn't know what we were
uncertainty.
gonna do.
I think that was like one of the primary causes of our stress, man. We didn't
Yeah.
know.
And then we
Medical
would try to
school is such a
grasp
lucrative prospect.
onto every bit of serotonin that we could, you know. And for you, that was
What serotonin
trying to
again?
save the world, like the
It's been a while.
happy hormone, right? The
I thought that was
happy
dopamine.
both. I mean, serotonin is what you feel when you take like MDMA, you know, like that euphoric.
Oh, okay.
Feeling. Yeah. Dopamine's more kind of like an all-purpose, like you're active and you're awake kind of thing.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So that's more cocaine, whereas serotonin's more the MDMA and ecstasy. So you can imagine what does what.
So we should have just taken more MDMA during our. Yeah.
Serotonin. But I mean, we kept grasping onto those little things that would make us happy momentarily than what would long term, hey?
Yeah, man. We should have been more real, but I don't think
Hey,
anybody. We were
were
in
young.
like this weird ecosystem.
Yeah, we were young.
Yeah.
And now you're starting a new life with your wife, your
Yeah.
legally married wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I have 2 years left in my program.
Yeah.
And at the end of those 2 years, the plan is to move to Canada together.
For sure.
So that's the plan forward.
Mhm.
And like I said, my ex-supervisor was interested in having me on as a postdoctoral fellow. So that's one avenue that I have, and I think I'm going to take it. I think it's a good opportunity for me. And I think
so, yeah.
And I think just coming home after all this time would be nice, at least for a little bit, at least for the postdoc. I'm homesick, man.
Yeah.
I miss home.
Would you be back in Edmonton?
Yeah, I'd be back at the U of A.
Oh, nice.
University of Alberta.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
We'll finally get to meet. Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll meet Ellie before. Maybe. No, I don't know.
Who knows? I don't know. If you want to come to Korea at some point when the coronavirus thing is over, we can just hang out
I'm planning
there.
that. I'm planning that. Yeah.
You want to go to Korea or do you want to go to
Jenny-
Japan? You gotta figure it out.
Korea.
Korea?
Well, actually, so me and Jenny are planning to go Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. Like we're gonna hit all of them. But I think the main one is Korea. Like mostly Korea, and then we'll dabble in the Japan and then the Taiwan because she's been to Japan multiple times. I've been to Korea and Taiwan as well, but like it was with family, so it doesn't count as a trip really.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How about coming to Hong Kong?
Oh, I don't think there's any desire to go to Hong Kong, man.
Yeah, not in the.
I'd rather just go to Vancouver. I go to Vancouver.
Basically Hong Kong, right?
It's basically Hong Kong.
Yeah,
Honestly, it is.
It's a cleaner,
It's
higher, less poverty-ridden.
Yeah, you go to Richmond and you get all the good things of Hong Kong, you know?
I don't know. There are some parts of Richmond that are kind of sketchy, aren't there? I think there's some.
It's all rich Asians, man.
All
rich Asians.
Is it rich? Maybe I've been to the wrong place.
I think you've been to the wrong place. Richmond is literally like all the rich Asians investing into property there. Like it's.
Huh.
Or maybe it doesn't feel sketchy for me because it's all Asians. Like it's all Chinese people. So it's just kind of like, this is better than Chinatown. And I'm like, therefore, it's not sketchy.
Okay.
And then you go to Vancouver and it's more sketchy.
Yeah. Where I want to go is to like Korea again because my family, and I want to meet you guys and all the food. I also want to go to Japan. I've never been to Japan. I want to go to Taiwan. I heard Taiwan has some beautiful places, and Ellie says that their food tastes like shit. But I still want to go.
Well, she's from central China, right? It's a very different cuisine.
Dude, it's a better cuisine.
It's a better cuisine. Yeah.
I have no qualms saying that Chongqing food.
Oh,
it's up there,
for
man.
sure.
It's up there.
Is it similar to like Szechuan area? Like
it is.
Food? Yeah. It's that area, right? That entire area has a very similar food. It's good, man. It's good.
Hot pot. and they have
Yeah.
this like what do you call it? Mao Tai. Mao Tai. It's like
Oh, like the liquor.
no, that's Mao Tai, right? Mao
Oh.
Tai is like a hot pot that comes pre-cooked and it comes out to you, and they have like
Oh,
pre-made hot pot like packages.
isn't that just the same as like shabu shabu?
Yeah,
Don't Koreans have that too?
yeah, but this is way better. Shabu
Okay.
shabu costs like usually in the range of like 40 Canadian dollars, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
This thing costs like $5. You can have it for lunch,
Yeah.
and you have enough for like leftovers for dinner or something.
Yeah.
It's great.
Honestly, I'd be down. I'd be down to do a Korea, Japan, Taiwan trip.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can probably only do Korea because of my schedule, but
Oh, okay.
we should
Yeah.
definitely meet up in Korea.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah.
We'll talk about it as soon as the coronavirus situation is over, and as soon as
When do you think that's going to be done?
I don't know, man. Russia says that they have a
So
vaccine
different.
ready for the end of August. China says that they have a vaccine ready for the end of this year.
Wow.
Oxford
Okay.
says that they're closing in on phase 3 trials.
So second that. Okay. So we're probably looking at next summer, hey? Earliest next summer.
Earliest is next summer.
Earliest next summer.
This is going to be a cold winter
Mm-hmm.
for you. For me, it's going to be warm.
Oh fuck. It's fine. It's fine. I'm used to it. Used to it, man. 24 years living here. 26 years living here. Like what can I complain about?
Ellie hates like snow and ice. She hates the cold.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
we went to Korea in February before this whole coronavirus situation came down. Like we went last year, February, and she was just always cold. It's like, and that wasn't even. It's Korea, man. It's not Canada.
It's not as cold, yeah.
No.
It's wet though. It's wet.
Yeah, that's true. It's a wet cold.
It's a wet cold. I'm used to the dry cold, so I can do that. I can't do wet cold. I can't do it. It's different. It hits.
You can
different.
escape from the dry cold. You can just turn on the furnace. You can put on some cold clothes. But that humidity permeates through the clothes.
Oh yeah. Even Toronto, like I was in Toronto and it was like minus 12 degrees. It killed me. And I came back here and it was like minus 38, and I'm like, this is fine. This is fine.
Do you think the cold is a? So we were talking a little bit about like before we talk. Was it during this podcast or before? We were talking about like how people might be coddled these days.
Oh, yeah. Like the PC culture. You mean the PC culture thing, or
like the PC culture thing, where people are kind of like protecting people all the time instead of having heated arguments and actually finding a middle ground. What they're choosing to do is just avoid the argument altogether, or just stick to people who share their similar view.
Right.
And this is on universities. This is not like outside. This is a place where debates should be happening, where you should be at the most questioning period of your life.
Yeah.
You're being coddled. Combined with the fact that the universities these days are suffering from some of the highest rates of depression and anxiety. There's an association there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's one leads to the other, whether the other one leads to like the depression, or whether those two are just kind of effects of something. I don't know what the relationship is there. But you see, okay, so have you read the Coddling of the American Mind?
No, I haven't.
It's a really good book. I've been reading it. And it talks about how there are 3 tenets that are being pushed in our universities today. The first one is that whatever doesn't kill you makes you weaker.
Oh.
Yeah.
As opposed to the regular saying.
Yeah. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You go through adversity, you'll learn from it, you become stronger.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the first tenet, that instead of having these difficult experiences, what you're having is a very coddled experience where you're being, where you're taught to be fragile, that it's okay to be fragile. Yeah. And what you were talking about with like the GPA, right? with the people who are getting into medical school. It kind of reminded me of this argument that if you're saying that just 3.5 is good enough to become a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then how is that really good for medical students? Like, is that good for our doctors in the future, that they're being told it's okay not to have to live up to this standard?
Right.
Getting a 3.5, honestly, I mean, maybe it's different for everybody, but I feel like it's not that difficult, right?
Fair. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you can adjust your course load in order to make it easier for you too.
Yeah.
So I had this really good point that I was going to say, that was going to tie this all back. Anyway, the second tenant, I don't remember the second tenant. I need to read this. I need to study this book more.
Fair. We need to.
Let's talk about that first. Let's talk about that first tenant. Okay.
Yeah.
So how much do you think that, do you see that in our universities? Like the pro-life, pro-choice debate. People say that you shouldn't have these images up on campus because it's harmful, it's hurtful, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I mean, personally, I think we avoided that, hey? Because I didn't really think about these things when we were in university. Like the PC culture, I think, hit right after we're in our fourth year, and by the time you're fourth year, you're just doing your own thing. You don't really care. So like personally, I've never seen and really had to deal with people that like at university who have those kind of views. But definitely like you see it a lot now. Like one example is, and arguably it is a bit insensitive, but like with our med group or med classes, we have to develop a mascot for the following year. So this year, the 2024s, their nickname is the Biohazards, and we're trying to give them a mascot. And then there was a whole debate that came up on whether or not a bat is actually that appropriate.
What?
The bat is appropriate because of COVID. And then people were arguing that because some people might have lost individual like family members to COVID, it was insensitive and it was too soon. Or I feel like whatever it is, whatever kind of topic you talk about, if you really keep looking into and diving it, you can always make up excuses of why it's offensive and why it's a problem, right? And I think that has like taken just a whole different turn with universities where everything's now offensive.
Right.
Yeah. It comes from social media, right? It comes from the idea that now everyone's voices are being heard, and usually the most offended are the most vocal. So you always end up hearing about the PC, like, you know, this is offensive, this is not, even if 80% of the world doesn't really give a shit.
And I don't think these people would actually say these things if they were not anonymous, if they weren't able to hide behind their computer screens and they had to confront you about these things.
Yeah. And like, and this goes back to that whole like the Salvation. I'm not giving a fuck. It goes into
really like that book.
Back into. I do.
Who's the author? It's like Matt something, right?
Matt something, yeah. Matt Subtle.
Matt Manson. Mark Manson.
Matt Manson, yeah. Mark Manson, yeah. Mark Manson. But it ties into that. Like where am I going with this? The whole idea of like, it's okay to disagree, you know? Like, I feel like that's lost, where social media is so tied to identity, and opinions and social justice is so tied to social media that people start eternalizing all of these different stances and opinions as their identity. So the second you come up to them and you give them a different opinion, they feel personally attacked and offended, right? The whole idea of like, you grew up in a different environment, therefore you have these things, or the whole idea that, you know, it's okay to have a different opinion. I can be respectful of your opinion, doesn't mean I have to agree. Like, that's completely lost. for some individuals who kind of live off of that validation that they get from being part of the social movement, right?
So
Because there's so many perks to that, right? Like, and like the Instagram, you know, like I've heard people say like all of those social media things, it's a drug.
it is
Right?
a drug.
When you get those likes, when you get those comments agreeing with you, that validation, it's another hit of serotonin, right? In your
Yeah.
brain. You're just like, you feel happy, you feel elated briefly.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
Mm-hmm.
what gets you those likes? Well, it's being on that bandwagon for social issues, right? And so you're
Virtue
always
signaling.
virtue signaling. That's the word. So that because that's become such a big like epidemic within society, then people start not wanting to even listen to other people's opinion, right? Because opinions that differ from yourself, it's hard, right? It's hard to listen to. It's hard to talk about. It's easier just to berate someone in virtual signal and get that hit of serotonin.
Yeah. There's the social media thing is really, I mean, the research shows that it's really bad for us. It's bad for children. But it's something like that you need these days, you know? It's like you can't get away from it. Your job prospects are tied to it. Like employers will actually look at your Facebook to figure out what kind of person you are.
Right.
And it's tied to a lot of your relationships with your friends. If you're not on Facebook, like I wasn't on Facebook for a long time and I lost contact with a lot of my friends. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't talk to you guys until I was able to
You
come to Hong
disappeared for a
Kong.
year, yeah.
I came back to Hong Kong and I was able to use Facebook Messenger again. And then I was like, okay, I can start reconnecting with you guys.
Yeah, that's when we found out you had a fiance.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're in that Chinese firewall, the Great Wall firewall of China.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Definitely.
So, even in China, right, with all this like WeChat, Weibo, there's a little bit of a different issue there where it's like a lack of freedom to voice your opinion, right? But even there's a lot of like opinions on things that are not regulated. For example, like there was that lawyer who adopted a 16-year-old girl, and he curried sexual favors from her, even though he was in the position of being a parent. He is a lawyer in the U.S. and I think he's a powerful man in China.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and he got called out on it. And I think that this is like the power of social media to do some good, to spread some like good, to do really good things, to call people out when there is bullshit, right? But at the same time, it also emphasizes extreme points, because extreme points are the ones that get the most likes, the most attention. And you see that with the algorithm, right? You see 100%. That thing with the US election. So the complete flip side is that you can have ads that are directed to people to elicit an emotional response, that guttural response that makes you polarized, that polarizes you and internalizes this emotion attached to an issue. And then I think a lot of people stop there.
Yeah.
That's where they stop. They don't consider, they don't dive deeper into it, because you're bombarded by so many issues at the same time, because you're always giving a fuck, that you don't have time to explore any of these issues in depth. Imagine that you're a parent. How much time do you really have to get educated about these issues when they don't really affect you at all? What you're worried about is making more money, making sure that your kid has a good education. It just seems like it just seems like there's no hope. there's no way to deal with this social issue.
The dystopian future.
Yeah, the dystopian future is here, man.
Takes over. Yeah.
It's integrated itself into our society, this social media thing. in such a way that we
It
can't
is.
take it out. It's like a cancer that's spread, and we can't
Yeah.
cut out the pieces that are metastasizing.
Mm-hmm. I think a big thing too is that like parents don't know. This is new, right? Like think of the kids that grew up with social media, they grew up Facebook already being a thing. It's like the norm. I think like people our age or like older, especially the ones older, we grew up without. There's a time where we didn't have internet. We didn't have social media, right? Like, sure, we had our messengers, but that wasn't social media. That was just us talking to our friends, right? That overtook. Like, we have another problem where we don't know how to talk on phones, where it's like you get anxiety from like trying to have a phone conversation. But like, I think Zoom is slowly like taking that away, at least with the whole pandemic. But if you think about like my cousins, right? They grew up with social media. They grew up with like, it's just the norm, right? TikTok is the norm. Like if you're not doing all of the social media stuff, you're just not a normal kid anymore. But then the parents didn't grow up with that. They don't know how to educate their children on what's real and what's not real, right?
Right.
Like they're not going to their kids and going like, hey, all these internet people, that's not real. That's just data. Right? That's just a response. That's an algorithm, like making you feel happy. Like your real friends, they're out there. They're like on this, like they're your neighbors. They're the kids at school. Like those are the people you need validation from, not these internet people. But parents don't know that. Like they don't know how to teach that. And I think maybe when we have kids, maybe it'll be a little bit different. You know?
Yeah. No, it will definitely be different because we grew up with this technology, and we just grow up. We're in this period where we are growing as human beings. We're learning so much about our society, and we have a lot of science to back it up. So we're not just discussing these issues. We're finding real peer-reviewed studies to validate some of our hypotheses, basically.
Yeah.
And just because we understand that there are social issues surrounding most technologies, I think we're just gonna, even if a new technology is introduced, we'll have this wariness, I think. And I think the last generation also had it. That's the problem. I don't think we're the only generation to have this woke, right? Like my parents, they didn't give me a phone until I was in junior high school. And even then it was just a flip phone. You know, I barely used that thing. I only used it to call my parents after I'm done school so they could come pick me up. Right? The first time I actually had like a personal computer was probably in high school because I needed it for studying.
Right.
So it's like, no, that's not true. No, I had a computer in junior high. I played games on it.
We played StarCraft.
Right? StarCraft. Yeah. Good times.
Those Naruto mods.
Oh, Sasuke. Oh my god, I used to love using like whatever the cloning dude was, Itachi.
Oh, Itachi. Okay,
yeah. In every Naruto game, Itachi would always be overpowered, no matter what it was.
Wasn't he a lurker or something in the start? Something like that.
Yeah,
Itachi was my main. I remember. I always played Itachi.
Itachi's good, man. Sasuke was like this Dark Templar.
Yeah.
Just be hiding in the shadows.
Shiori.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we grew up kind of adapting, so I think we're a little bit more safe towards the whole social media thing. But what we're not safe is our reliance on internet and like TV, right? Like your parents are probably like, they do analog. They don't need digital, but we need digital.
Do we? I mean, we do. Like for my work, I always use my computer.
And don't you feel lost without your computer? You know, if you can't just sit there and Google something, don't you just feel a little bit empty inside?
No, man, I'm on my computer too much. I want to get off it as much as I can.
Oh, but you're not. You're still on it.
Yeah, it's true.
That's the thing.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. No matter what excuses I make for myself, I'm still on my computer.
And then your parents are just like, they can go a week without even touching one.
You're right. Yeah. But their jobs don't rely on having a computer. My dad's does, because he's a computer programmer. But my mom doesn't need to do.
No.
My mom reads a lot of books.
My mom just discovered YouTube this year.
What?
She just discovered YouTube this year. Yeah.
My parents discovered TikTok this year.
Oh, well, they're ahead of my parents, man. They're way ahead. It's your dad's programming skills, they're way ahead.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
Hmm. What's your mom using YouTube for? YouTube has so many different variety of content. You can use it for anything.
All her show, she just watches like videos. I don't know what she watches, like travel videos, cooking videos, music videos. Like she just watches everything.
You know, that's the thing though. For these kids who are exposed to technology at such a young age, they're also exposed to this wealth of information. They can, if they want to, you can get a university level education from YouTube. I go to YouTube in order to find out videos for the techniques that I'm using. Like if I need to do a mouse surgery,
Oh, 100%.
I'll be
Yeah.
able to watch that, right?
Yeah, my cousins are going to be smarter than I am. Like they, at their age, they're already like so much more knowledgeable than I am on just
Uh-huh.
the multitude of topics, and it's all because of the internet and YouTube. Yeah, like again, there's good and bad, right? There's of course always going to be good and bad. Like I'm all for advancement of technology because there's always, I feel like for the most part, like most of the time, the benefit of technology will always outweigh the risk, unless you're talking about AI taking over and killing us all. But if you think about the internet, people always complain about, the internet and social media, but overall, on a global scale, internet's been great. And I think that's with most technologies, and it'll just take a couple generations before you kind of iron out the kinks of like social media, right? Like we know how to deal with social media, parents don't, right? So like when we have kids, we're kind of
Do we
like,
though?
hey,
Do we though? Do we know how to navigate all the bullshit that's on the internet?
I think so. I mean, we know how to navigate past all the spam and the scams on email, which our parents didn't know how to navigate through.
Yeah, but if there's a news article on CNN about hydroxychloroquine, right?
Yeah.
How, how are we going to navigate that? Unless you're scientifically literate, which thankfully we are. We can read the science. Even if it's a social science paper, we have no problem reading that.
Right. I think teaching your kids to not just read the headline.
Unless it's The Onion, then you can just read the headlines.
Read the headline and forget it ever existed. Hey
I don't
kids,
know
there
how
used to be
much
a thing
that's true,
called The
though.
Onion.
I don't know how much of that's true. I don't think they
The
even
Onion?
read the headline. Kids these days, I think they give they internalize a version of the headline that's spread by their peers.
But I think this generation, and I've heard this a lot of times, like the next generation, not the next generation, the current generation. So the Gen Zers and the Gen Alphas, like they are innately distrustful of the government and media.
Really?
They are.
Huh.
Think about it. Who's the one who's just they're the most rebellious.
But what's the alternative to that?
What do you mean?
Like, how are they going to get their information if they're
I think
distrustful of the
I mean
government and the media?
they still utilize media
Mm.
and they still utilize like news sources. It's just that I think they are more aware that the media lies and the government lies. If you just think about the social environment that they've had to grow up through the past 4 to 5 years, it's always been fake news this, fake news that.
It's quite tumultuous.
So they're more innately like distrustful of what they hear and possibly more inquisitive about what the truth actually is.
Huh.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, like it's easy to shit on them because they're the young generation, but like in some ways they are heading in a more technologically literate, well, they are moving in a technologically literate path,
Yeah.
right?
But it's like going back to what we were talking about, like the coddling that young people face. A lot of these times, the views that are shared a lot of the time are progressive views, right? Very progressive views.
Right.
And there's not really a regulation on that because it's socially regulated. And like you said, if you want to jump on the bandwagon, if you want to get that serotonin, if you want to feel accepted by other people in your peer group, you got to share these views.
Yeah.
And they don't entertain the opposite view. You hear about these Twitter firestorms all the time. Somebody presents an argument and everybody attacks them. And there is cancel culture in it. Well, I mean, cancel culture has been going on for a while.
Yeah.
But you hear about these universities where speakers are being denied. Either the students are protesting against the speaker actually coming into the university to give a talk,
Mm-hmm.
or they actively stop students from attending these lectures.
Yeah.
So I don't think our access to information is all there. Even despite
Right.
these, we're having this situation where people are being denied access to information in the spirit of, this is too harmful for you. This is not the right way to go, and you just have to believe me. Don't trouble yourself with having an internal conflict and figuring out who the fuck you are and what your beliefs
Right.
are.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I also wanted to get into med school for the longest time, because I didn't really question my own beliefs, right? I
Right.
didn't know how to. No one told me to. Maybe that's not a good excuse, right? Maybe I should have been more woke in terms of my own personal beliefs.
But perhaps that comes with age, I guess. Right? Because now you are.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're woke. Took some time, but like.
I think I'm lucky though. I think I'm lucky. I think some people don't get that.
Fair, yeah.
If I never took that leap and went to China, I don't know if my life would be that different.
For sure.
3 months after I worked in China, I had to come back.
Yeah.
And that was like a black hole, It was threatening to suck me back into my old world.
Oh, okay.
Tear apart the new me, and I was kind of afraid. And Ellie was a big part of that too, right? Because she was a big part of my change.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to pull everything out of my ass in order to try and stay in China.
Yeah.
And then I was able to secure a position for 6 months, but then that was only temporary, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I found this position here, but even this is temporary. I need to find a solution moving forward. But if
you found it pretty much in the coming back to Canada and working for your ex-supervisor, right?
Yeah, ex-supervisor. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there were so many things that could have gone wrong there, and I could have felt at my most vulnerable time, I could have sunk into an even deeper depression, where I don't know if I could have come out of.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Life is so random, man. Life is so random.
Yeah, you don't realize it. You don't realize how random it is until you go in the real world, hey?
Is this the real world? I'm worried that 5 years later, I'm going to look back at this and have a similar sort of revelation.
Hey, and if you do, I mean, that's good, right? That's growth. That's, you feel like you're in a good place now, and if you have that revelation in the future, you're in an even better place.
Yeah, you're right.
What it means, right? I you know what? I hope you have that. I hope you have that feeling in 5 years.
Thanks,
and you look back at today, and you're like, yeah, that was a low. If this is a low, you're doing pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks,
so our takeaways from this podcast for all your listeners are:
sea turtles are really important.
Sea turtles are very important. Don't be in a rush to get to where you are. Life is random. You got to take some time to figure out who you are as a person.
Slow down, you crazy child.
Yeah,
so ambitious for a juvenile.
Who knows? 50 years from now, maybe no one dies from old age. Why are you rushing through life now?
Yeah.
And third takeaway is just don't give a fuck. just don't care too much, man. Just save your energy for other things.
There you have it, folks. Read, what's his name again? Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Uh-huh. And what was the other book? The
Coddling of the American Mind.
Yes. I'm going to have to get that one too.
It's a really good book. You should read it.
I will.
End of Gender by Dr. Deborah So.
That's
I don't agree
her
with.
Name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's hot, man.
You're right. You're not wrong.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me on this podcast, man.
Thank you for having me.
Mm.
It's been a lot of fun.
Good luck on your medical career, man. You're going to become a great fucking doctor.
Oh, let's hope. Let's hope no one dies.
What? That's how you want to end the podcast?
Yeah, 100%.